there's a conceptual distinction between mysteries and problems. We don't know where various aspects of the world fall in those two categories. That's an empirical question. But the conceptual distinction nevertheless remains. I mean, assuming that we're not angels, let's assume that we're organic creatures. Okay? If we're organic creatures, we have a fixed cognitive structure. Otherwise, we'd be angels. Okay? So we have some fixed cognitive structure. Like any other fixed structure of the organism, it has a scope and it has limits. We are genetically programmed so that we can become humans and not bees. Okay, we're not genetically programmed so we can become anything. If you could become anything, you'd never become anything at all. You'd just be some kind of amoeboid creature. So we have internal structure that directs the process of growth in certain ways, allows some changes, not others, due to the environment, due to intrusion, and maybe some days people figure out a way to turn a bat into a mouse or something, but there's a limit, and the same's got to be true of our cognitive structures, unless, of course, we're angels. So if we're not angels, then we have cognitive structures which are going to have scope and limits. Okay, that yields the distinction between problems and mysteries. Mysteries will be what lies beyond our cognitive limits, which must exist unless we're angels. Problems will be things that are within our cognitive limits. Now let's go to the question of vitalism. Well, it was an open question, whether it's... notice that the problem and mystery is a biological concept. It's relative to the organism. So what's a problem, a mystery for, say, a bee is not a mystery for me necessarily, and conversely, because we have different cognitive structures. So the notion is relative to humans. It's a normal biological concept, just like the visual system, say, for my granddaughter, can become mammalian, but not insect. The same sort of distinction. But the question of what lies within the two categories is an empirical question to be discovered. So perhaps it was believed at one point that life is beyond our cognitive reach. It's a mystery for humans. Okay, it was discovered that it's not beyond our cognitive reach. Hume and Locke argued that the properties of motion are beyond our cognitive reach, and as Hume said, Newton's greatest discovery was to have demonstrated that. As far as we understand, as far as we know, they're correct, but it's an empirical question. Maybe someday we'll be able to comprehend not just the theories of motion, but what Locke and Hume and Galileo want to comprehend, to really understand how these mysterious properties work, instead of being mystified by the fact that I can move the moon by moving my hand, as we are, of course. But they're just two separate issues, and Churchill is just missing the point. There's a conceptual distinction, then there's an empirical question of what lies within these domains. So take particular cases like, say, consciousness. We have no idea. Maybe it'll turn out to be like motion. We'll be able to develop a theory of it, but it won't be. But we won't be able to conceive of how the theory works. So it's like the fact that I can't conceive of the fact that when you take a drop of water and you send an electric current through it, it ends up as two gases. I mean, I know it happens because I learned it in a chemistry course, but I don't have the kind of conception of it that Galileo and Newton and the founders of modern science aimed for. And we've given up that hope. It doesn't matter what we can conceive of anymore. We accept what the best theoretical explanations give us. And it may turn out, probably very likely will turn out, that the Priestley's approach to consciousness, namely try to discover the organic structures that yield these phenomena, maybe that will yield a result like Newton's theory of motion. Explanatory theory, but not one we can conceive of. And now consciousness is called the hard problem. In the 18th century and 17th century, motion was called the hard problem. In fact, the same terms were used. It's the hard rock for philosophy. It's Sir William Petty, a contemporary of Newton's. And the reason is that motion, just what Locke said, motion has properties that we cannot conceive of, which is correct. It does. So we've given up the hope of conceiving of them and just, develop theories of motion. It's not. Hume, for example, described Newton's greatest contribution as demonstrating that there are mysteries, his term, which the human mind will never penetrate. And he meant the mysteries of motion. Those mysteries were never solved. They were abandoned. Science just took a less ambitious course, aiming for intelligible theories rather than comprehending mysteries, which by their very nature we can't comprehend. That's all. That's Hume already.